European Environment Commissioner Virginis Sinkevicius told Euronews Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's actions towards Ukraine were shameful.
More than 75% of the total number of journalists killed globally have died in the war in Gaza, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists' latest report.
Several people are reported to have been killed in airstrikes in both Ukraine and Russia. On Thursday, missiles hit targets in multiple regions across Ukraine, damaging homes and infrastructure facilities. Cruise and ballistic missiles were fired at locations as far west as Lviv, close to the border with Poland. A number of people were injured in the strikes. Ukrainian officials say some of at least 10 projectiles were intercepted. Kupiansk in the east was also hit, and at least 2 people were said to have died in the overnight assault. Russia has, in recent weeks, intensified air attacks, while Ukraine has also stepped up cross-border strikes into Russia. The governor of Belgorod region says 6 people were killed and 18 injured in the border city in Russia when a barrage of Ukrainian missiles struck a shopping mall.
EU Commissioner and former Lithuanian Minister Virginis Sinkevicius says the horrors of living under Soviet rule is still in living memory for Lithuanians. Euronews joined him in Ukraine recently, where he met with President Zelensky. Lithuania, the first of the 3 Baltics to declare independence from the Soviet Union in 1990, is one of the strongest per capita donors of military and financial aid to Ukraine.
It's first of all about our history, when hundreds and thousands, if you were a family of teachers, if you were a large farmer, most likely you were sent to Siberia, where most of the people never came back. They never returned. So and if you look, not so much changed. So many kidnapped children, so many families which had to go through some camps in Russia and etc. So I mean, this ethnic cleansing, what they're doing, has not changed this imperial ambition which they're imposing now on Ukraine, and Lithuania still remembers, of course, the part of its tragic history.
Part of the wake-up call for Europe after Russia's full-ground invasion of Ukraine, he says, is how to avoid further complacency when it comes to security matters.
For the Western world, it's extremely important to make sure that we have a plan to support Ukraine, because now this decision-making, when it's so long, when we have to fight for every decision, that sends a very positive signal to Moscow, first of all, and very negative to Ukraine. I think the mistake is that there is still thinking that 1 month or the other month it can be over. We see that Russia is gambling exactly on that. They are waiting off. They are waiting for elections in US, elections in EU, and might be a completely different view. We already see some of the new governments in the EU who are not so supportive of Ukraine.
And what do you say to Viktor Orban?
I think it's shameful not to see obvious and, for example, decision to postpone decisions, not to have a vote on Sweden joining NATO. That's obvious, actions against the collective security, against the interest of the EU, against the interest of the Western world. And that's something that can only satisfy one side. It's the Moscow regime. Therefore, it's not a good timing to take for granted. It's time to actually increase our defense capabilities, defense industry, in order to not only provide for Ukraine, but also to provide for ourselves.
Russian authorities may be generating enough new forces to sustain losses caused by the current tempo of their offensive operations in Ukraine through 2025, says the Institute for the Study of War. The UK Defence Ministry recently said that the average daily number of Russian casualties in Ukraine has risen by almost 300 during the course of 2023. If the numbers continue at the current rate over the next year, Russia will have lost over 500,000 personnel in Ukraine. In early December, it reported that the assaults on Avdiivka have resulted in 90% increase in Russian casualties. Ukraine said on Thursday it was withdrawing troops from some parts of the eastern town of Avdiivka to better position after a month of heavy fighting. Ukraine's 3rd Assault Brigade, considered to be one of Ukraine's largest and best equipped, confirmed that it was urgently redeployed to Avdiivka, adding that the situation in the area is, quote, hell and extremely critical. The Institute for the Study of War says that there are no confirmed changes to the front line in this area, although Russian forces reportedly advanced in the south and north of Avdiivka. Russian sources claim that Russian forces advanced to or even beyond the main Ukrainian ground line of communication in Avdiivka along Industrial Avenue, which then becomes Grushevskoho Street. Ukrainian military sources say that the supply and evacuation of Avdiivka has become challenging, but alternative logistics routes prepared in advance have been activated.
More than 75% of the total number of journalists and media workers killed globally have died in the war in Gaza. More journalists were killed in the first 3 months of this war than have ever been killed in a single country over an entire year. These are the chilling figures of the new report published Thursday by the Committee to Protect Journalists. CPJ is investigating whether a dozen journalists killed in the Israel-Gaza war were deliberately targeted by Israeli soldiers. 72 Palestinian journalists were killed in Israeli attacks on Gaza. In contrast, 22 journalists and media workers were killed in 18 countries outside the conflict. The 2023 numbers are the highest since 2015 and show almost a 44% increase on 2022's figures. CPJ's 2023 data shows that targeting of journalists remains constant in Mexico, Somalia, and the Philippines, countries that have proven deadly for journalists over decades. 2 journalists were killed in Mexico in 2023, a decrease from its record of 13 in 2022. Yet, media workers continue to face attacks, harassment, threats, and abduction amid corruption and organized crime in one of the world's deadliest countries for the press. Angelos Michaelidis is a gay single parent. He had 2 daughters in the United States with a surrogate mother. The 53-year-old doctor now lives in Athens. The bill allowing the marriage of same-sex couples that will be voted in Parliament on Thursday will change his family's life.
Μόλις ψηφιστεί ο νόμος, θα εγγράψω τα παιδιά μου στο ληξιαρχείο, οπότε θα είναι ορατά για την πολιτεία. Θα έχουν άμκα, ιατροφαρμακευτική περίθαλψη, δωρεάν, όπως όλα τα παιδιά. Θα μπορώ να ησυχάσω ότι δεν χρειάζεται να δουλεύω το πρωί ως το βράδυ για να τα εγγράψω σε ένα ιδιωτικό σχολείο, αλλά μπορώ να τα εγγράψω σε ένα δημόσιο σχολείο.
Several MPs have reservations about the possibility of same-sex couples adopting children, but the government argues that the bill will restore an injustice that has been in place for many years. Professor of Constitutional Law Lina Papadopoulos has drafted the bill.
Υπάρχουν πάρα πολλά παιδιά που μεγαλώνουν με 2 μαμάδες ή με 2 μπαμπάδες. Αυτά τα παιδιά στο σπίτι τους, όταν βγαίνουν έξω βόλτα, όταν πάνε να παίξουν μπάσκετ, όταν χτύπα ξύλο πάνε στο νοσοκομείο, έχουν δίπλα τους τις 2 μαμάδες τους. Έρχεται η πολιτεία και τους παίρνει τη μία μαμά, τους τη στερεί, την αφαιρεί από τα έγγραφά τους και τους λέει δεν έχετε δεύτερη μαμά. Τα παιδιά αυτά γνωρίζουν ότι έχουν δεύτερη μαμά. Το ξέρουν, το ζουνε κάθε μέρα. Άρα λοιπόν το πρώτο και πολύ σημαντικό είναι ότι αυτά τα παιδιά πια δεν θα στερούνται εξαιτίας της πολιτείας και εξαιτίας μιας κρατικής απόφασης τον δεύτερο γονιό τους.
Far-right parties and the Orthodox Church strongly oppose the bill.
Με την υπερψήφιση του νομοσχεδίου, η Ελλάδα γίνεται η 16η χώρα μέλος της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης που επιτρέπει στα ομόφυλα ζευγάρια να παντρευτούν με πολιτικό γάμο. Για τη ΛΟΑΤΚΙ πλάς κοινότητα αυτή είναι μια σημαντική νίκη και μια στιγμή που περίμενε εδώ και πολλά χρόνια. Όμως το σημαντικότερο είναι πως επιτέλους κατοχυρώνονται τα δικαιώματα των παιδιών των ομόφυλων ζευγαριών που μέχρι σήμερα για το κράτος ήταν περίπου αόρατα. Από την Αθήνα για το Euronews, Απόστολος Τάικος.
A report on the scale of anti-Semitism in the UK since Hamas's attack on Israel has showed a 589% increase in the number of incidents compared with the same period in 2022. The Community Security Trust, which monitors anti-Jewish abuse and attacks and provides security for UK Jewish citizens, recorded more than 4,000 anti-Semitic incidents in the UK in 2023, the highest total in a calendar year reported to the organisation. 2/3 of the 2023 incidents occurred after the 7th of October Hamas attack. The types of altercations recorded include assault, damage to Jewish property, threats and abusive behaviour. Online anti-Semitism also rose by nearly 300%. The British Home Secretary said the government has taken steps to confront it, including increasing funding for protective security at Jewish schools and places of worship. Japan's economy is now the world's fourth largest after it contracted in the last quarter of 2023 and fell behind Germany. The government reported the economy shrank at an annual rate of 0.4% in October to December, according to Cabinet Office data on real GDP, though it grew 1.9% for all of 2023. It contracted 2.9% in July to September. 2 straight quarters of contraction are considered an indicator an economy is in a technical recession. Japan's economy was the second largest until 2010 when it was overtaken by China's. Japan's nominal GDP totaled $4.2 trillion last year, while Germany's was $4.4 trillion. A weaker Japanese yen was a key factor in the drop to fourth place, since comparisons of nominal GDP are in dollar terms.